These are new animals that we recently discovered. So we discovered the sugar cube shrew in Ethiopia in early 2026. It's only 5 centimeters long and weighs as much as a sugar cube. We also added the Marmosa chachapoya to our Pokedex, which is an opossum-like animal in Peru. The Darth Vader isopod was discovered last year off the coast of Vietnam. It's a sea bug that grows over 12 inches long, has a head that resembles Star Wars, and coincidentally, we also discovered the Darth Vader goby a month later, which is just a fish. Also in the deep, we discovered a carnivorous death ball sponge in the Southern Ocean that has hooks on it that trap and digest its prey. On the reptile side, we discovered the Leonardo DiCaprio snake in the Himalayas, and we named it after him to honor his environmental activism. We also found the Lord Sauron piranha from the Amazon, named after Lord of the Rings because of the orange fins and black vertical stripe. We found a new bat called the Wabalas horseshoe bat in Kenya that's pretty similar to other horseshoe bats, but genetically different. And finally, and maybe the coolest of them all, is the Great Salt Lake nematode. It's only the 3rd animal ever that can survive in Utah's Great Salt Lake. You love to see it. These are people who are famous but don't actually feel famous, so let's see if we agree. Jason Derulo. That's so true. He probably has more hits than basically everybody's favorite artist, but he's never talked about. He could easily do a Super Bowl. Shout out to Jason Derulo, man. Yeah, Pitbull's kind of in that camp too, I'd agree. Same sort of thing where like nobody really talks about him, but he's one of the GOATs. I don't think he's ever missed with a song, but I like never see him at events or like discussed on social media. No, I think Vin Diesel gets his flowers. He's definitely like a bit more incognito, I guess, than other celebrities, but he's also not like super famous. He only has like one big movie franchise. Florado was never as big as some of these other people. He's definitely famous, but I feel like he's the right amount of famous relative to his influence. Jason Derulo, on the other hand, he should be like Justin Bieber level fame. Maroon 5. I mean, Adam Levine's pretty famous. I guess in terms of the band though, yeah, like I don't know, a single other person. I think with them though, they're nobody's favorite band, but they have enough hits where they're still relevant, so it's kind of interesting. An Avatar? What? I mean, I've never met an Avatar fan, to be fair, so I don't know how it's like super popular, even though I saw the recent movie 6 times in a row for some reason. These are people who became famous for doing absolutely nothing. So in 2006, a man named Guy went to the BBC for a job interview, but the BBC accidentally mistook him for another guy and was pulled into a live interview as a tech expert. He played along and got through it, making him famous for his mistake. Alex Lee was a teenager working at Target doing literally nothing special when a girl came up and posted a picture of him to Twitter, getting him hundreds of thousands of followers in a day, and even an appearance on Ellen. Andres Serrato is an electrical engineer who was modeling for stock photos in Hungary when all of a sudden his pictures caught on and became memed on for now over a decade. This is similar to Kyle Craven, who released one of his school pictures that ended up being the meme format for Bad Luck Brian. Jeremy Meeks was a gang felon whose mugshot was released by the Stockton Police Department in 2014, and because he looked like a model, he became famous upon release from prison and even ended up walking the runway at Fashion Week. And finally, Ken Bone was a random audience member who asked a question during one of the presidential debates, and he actually became famous off of this, selling thousands of t-shirts apparently upon launch. Pretty cool, right? These are people who fake their own kidnappings. So in 2016, a woman named Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days, and upon returning she was beaten and claimed that 2 masked women kidnapped her while jogging, which led to a national manhunt. After investigators looked into it turned out she was just staying with her ex-boyfriend, and she used this lie to gain a $30,000 GoFundMe, and later even admitted to it being a hoax in 2022. A woman named Jennifer Wilbanks disappeared for 4 days in 2005 right before her wedding in Georgia, and while she originally claimed abduction, she later admitted it was because she got cold feet and had to pay a $15,000 fine because of the search efforts. Another woman named Quinn Gray sent a fake ransom note to her husband demanding $50,000, claiming she was being held hostage by 3 men, only to reveal later after surveillance footage leaked that she kidnapped herself and she was just hanging out with a local guy at a bar trying to extract money from her husband. And finally, a man from the UK named John Darwin faked his own death during a canoe trip to claim insurance money, but after failing, he later reappeared and claimed amnesia, but ultimately he was still convicted of a crime. So don't do this. These are people who were deleted from history. So Nikolai Yezhov was a high-ranking official under Joseph Stalin, leading the secret police. However, after being arrested and executed for disloyalty, Stalin literally photoshopped him out of every photo, making his existence murky. Hitler did this with people as well, including Joseph Goebbels, who was once Nazi Germany's chief propagandist, by taking him out of some of his photos. The Egyptian pharaoh Hatshepsut was also almost erased from the timeline after her successor smashed her statues, chiseled her name off temple walls, and tried to delete her from the king list. For 3,000 years she was forgotten until a stone puzzle proved her existence in the 1800s. Genghis Khan would force his daughters to marry kings of other nations, so when the kings died his daughters were the leaders, but they ended up getting too much power, so all of his daughters were written out of the Mongol history, despite technically owning the majority of the land. And finally, a man with a severe case of amnesia named Benjamin Kyle had no identity for 11 years as the FBI and DNA experts couldn't find a single record on him, technically making him non-existent until they eventually learned his real name. That's crazy. These are pranks that are disappearing. So prank phone calls are down significantly as a result of spam filters, AI screening for new callers, and people just not answering unknown numbers. Fake pizza orders are also down as well, since the majority of pizza orders now come from online portals or delivery services like Uber Eats. Ding dong ditching is down significantly with the advent of Ring cameras catching kids in the act, and also because kids nowadays are found to be less social and confrontational with neighbors. For similar reasons, TPing houses during Halloween is also down due to increased surveillance, CCTV, and ring footage. On that note, many public pranks like putting soap into fountains has almost disappeared entirely because of increased vandalism laws and heavy camera presence in public spaces. Putting a coin on a string for unlimited food in vending machines has disappeared also because now it's considered theft, and also because new machines won't allow for that mechanism. And finally, food tampering pranks like swapping sugar for salt or messing with drinks is almost entirely gone now because of sensitivity around food safety and the legal repercussions that can come with it. So rest in peace. These are products that were originally invented for war. So the US military was shrinking food so they could make it easier to ship to soldiers, and in the process invented dehydration technology and created a cheese powder. Following this, somebody got their hands on excess cheese powder and decided to experiment by putting it on a corn puffer and created Cheetos. During World War II, the United States had an embargo so that they couldn't ship the secret syrup of Coca-Cola to Coca-Cola in Germany. So instead, Germany made their own garbage soda called Fanta, which is the same fruity Fanta that we know today. M&Ms were invented during the Spanish Civil War since soldiers were eating full-size chocolate bars that were melting in the trenches. They were actually sold exclusively to militaries during World War II with the slogan, "Melts in your mouth, not in your hands," to comply with military regulations. Superglue was invented in 1942 after scientists were trying to create a clear plastic, but they kept messing it up, leading to the adhesive, which was then used to spray wounds shut on the battlefield. And finally, even the internet was invented during war times in the form of the ARPANET, which was a zombie network used to store data in the event of a nuclear fallout. Pretty cool, right? These are scenes that actors refused to film. So Zendaya refused to have her first ever kiss on camera as a teenager during a scene in Shake It Up. She insisted on kissing the boy on the cheek instead. John Krasinski refused to cheat on Pam during season 8 of The Office, convincing the writers that the audience would never look at Jim the same if he did that. Michelle Rodriguez did the same thing in The Fast and the Furious, refusing to cheat on Vin Diesel. Bruce Lee refused to film a scene in which he was meant to lose to Robin in the Batman TV series, but he argued that nobody would believe that he could lose to Robin and negotiated a draw. Kathy Bates refused to pray to the devil in American Horror Story as it didn't align with her belief system, and Taron Egerton refused to place a tracking device inside a woman's body during this scene in Kingsman, insisting that he got a body double. Samuel L. Jackson has refused multiple nudity scenes as he claims his genitalia isn't formidable enough to match his big aura. And finally, Denzel Washington famously refused to kiss Julia Roberts in The Pelican Brief because he wanted to remain loyal to his core audience of black women. So now you know? These are secret code names used by famous people. So presidents use Secret Service code names to make security communication quicker and clearer, with Trump's being Mogul, Obama's being Renegade, and Biden's being Celtic. Many celebrities check into hotels under different names, with Brad Pitt checking in as Bryce Pilaf, Justin Bieber under Chandler Bing, and Johnny Depp as Mr. Stench. Michael Jackson used to check into hotels as Dr. Dolittle. Queen Elizabeth was referred to as Kitty Hawk by her security detail, while Pope John Paul II had the fitting code name of Halo. Many celebrities order food under other celebrities' names to increase confusion, like George Clooney, who uses Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Jay-Z, who uses Frank Sinatra. Speaking of which, Frank Sinatra is one of the only celebrities in history to have a secret government service name, being Napoleon. Tobey Maguire uses the name Neil Deep in public, which was actually leaked after the Sony hack, and Michael Jordan uses the codename Clark Kent when he's trying to be incognito. And finally, Matt Damon uses the name John President whenever he sets a reservation, so the staff is forced to call him Mr. President for the rest of his visit. Pretty cool, right? These are serial killers that are still out there, so be careful. So at any given point, there's about 50 active serial killers in the United States, with some specific ones being the I-70 killer responsible for killing lone employees in specialty shops across the Midwest. He remains at large and is likely in his 50s at this point, still living among us. The Chicago Strangler, who murdered over 50 women since 2001, is still out there, apparently still doing it, as is the Little Rock, Arkansas serial stabber from 2020 who's yet to be captured. The West Mesa bone collector who buried the remains of 11 women in New Mexico in 2009 has yet to be caught, marking them at large. And this is the same story of the Long Island killer responsible for 11 bodies recovered near a beach, and an Edgecombe, North Carolina killer in 2009 also who killed 11 people as well. In other parts of the world, Pedro Lopez, known as the Monster of the Andes, confessed to over 300 murders across South America and was sentenced to a mental institution in the 90s. However, upon his release in 1998, he hasn't been tracked down, meaning he's about 75 years old and still out there to this day. And finally, the Zodiac killer, who's responsible for at least 5 deaths, but as many as 35, has never been caught and is still technically out there to this day, though likely in his 80s at this point. Stay safe.